talk Navy stuff. It's my opinion, it's not Navy policy. I left the service 4 years ago as the UK National Hydrographer. I became very, very interested in space because I'm a proponent of what's known as the blue economy. And my challenge to you this afternoon is, what is the blue economy of Portsmouth and what are the opportunities that come out of the blue economy of Portsmouth? Is that a click or is that a dictaphone? So, I'll just go back one. Where was I? That was not up. So the catapults, people talk about the catapults already today. Catapults are government technology innovation centres. And to my mind, they are a modern incarnation of operational research. And I thought that rather than go back and talk about how we fought submarines in the Second World War, which of course is fascinating, how about talking about some operational research and how it can be applied today? And Donna talked about the compression of government budgets, and she talked about the need to not move away from the Navy, but to replace what the Navy as the Navy has shrunk, replace that with other opportunities that are much more high-tech. And I think there is a whole transition from government, government technology, what was the preserve of governments and militaries in the past. I think there's a whole opportunity to transition that into the commercial world, because we now have access to data in a way that we've never had it commercially before. That's the big operational challenge that I see. So the government has set up technology innovation centres called catapults. That's just a branding name. They bring together government, academia and industry in one place with real people and real investment, and their task is to grow themes around the UK national economy. So at the moment there are 12 catapults. This says 10 here. They're 12. They're coming on stream, roughly speaking, one a year. They cover a range of themes. At the moment they are focused on things such as high-value manufacturing, offshore renewables. There are 3 medical catapults of one form or another. There's the satellite applications catapult, which I represent here this afternoon. There's transport systems. There's a digital catapult, which is focused very, very much on big data and what do you do with data. And there's several other ones, which I won't bore you with. They're spread around the country. My catapult is up in Harwell, just south of Oxford, on what is now rapidly becoming a space cluster. We have 100 people. 25% are AKD, spacey, satellite-y type people. The other 75%, some are HR and that sort of stuff, but the remainder are business development people. They are focused on finding funding, writing funding applications, helping companies and businesses create opportunities for the future. And their task is very simple: grow UK jobs and grow UK companies. Focus on SMEs, because 90% of all this country's companies are SMEs, but don't forget the big boys and girls as well, and see what you can do to grow this economy. And actually, it's there's some quite demanding KPIs. I put this one up here, and this would tell you that we have established 5 or 6, in fact 5 centres of excellence, one of which has been centred here in Portsmouth and around the Solent region. I make an unashamed plug for the South Coast Centre of Excellence, which again brings together government, academia and industry around the theme of satellite applications here on the South Coast, led by Portsmouth University, but working in conjunction with SMMI up in Southampton and as far east as Bournemouth University as well. Jamila's been involved in this. Grant Day is here at this conference today. It's a great opportunity to link the OR pro bono work that you talked about with the Centre of Excellence Council, which if you don't know about, I would love to tell you more about here in the city, because it is a chance to grow our ability in satellite applications. Down here on the left-hand side, this would say Plymouth, which is the Southwest Centre of Excellence. Up in Scotland, there is another one centred on Strathclyde and the Western Isles. And those 3 have got a very strong marine, maritime, blue economy theme, which brings me back to my point about the blue economy. Anybody heard of the blue economy before? I love it. Absolutely love it. What's the blue economy of the UK worth? Anybody know? What's the blue economy of Portsmouth worth? You know, Marine South East, which is a not-for-profit rump of the old Cedar organisation, just up the road in Whiteley from here, they've got 3,000 marine and maritime centred companies and agencies on their books for the South East. And they've got something in the region of 14 billion worth of investment in that 3,000. It's really interesting numbers. We don't describe this country, we don't describe our island country, we don't describe our island city in terms of a blue economy or what it's worth. It would be a really interesting piece of research to find out what it's worth. Space age, there was some Gucci photographs in here, but basically we've gone from where the only way you could do it was go and race the Russians to the moon. You then were able to commercialize with some of the big boys like Inmarsat as you transition from government into private sector, but now we're into a disruptive world. You've all got space in your mobile phones. There'll be nobody in this room without a mobile phone. At least you probably almost certainly have all got smartphones, and they wouldn't work without space. And you can access data, you can go and find out what ships are in the English Channel now, what satellites are going overhead now, what aeroplanes are flying over Sydney now. You can bring that up on your mobile phone. That's disruptive technology. What can we do in this region with that disruptive technology? And as you address the councillors' challenges, and I would actually prefer to call them opportunities, as you address those challenges, supposing you crack that problem of age discrepancy between the older chaps living down in the south of the island and the ones living up to the north, supposing you crack that, can you export that? Can you export that skill set? Supposing you crack Portsmouth transport system's problem, can you export that? Because what we are is a wonderful ecosystem. We're a trials platform here. We're a test bed. One of the things I do is I chair a lot of conferences and workshops around the world. I chair a huge amount in the blue economy. You never see a Brit standing up and leading on technological development or innovation. If somebody's going to talk about autonomous shipping or autonomy, talk about unmanned surface vessels, or talk about greater efficiency in diesel engines, pound to a prince with proverbial, it'll be somebody from a Baltic state. It'll be a German, a Dutchman, a Dane, a Finn. The autonomous ship plan that's being brought out by Rolls-Royce is being led by a Finn. You never see a Brit standing up there. We don't lead, and yet we have that amazing history that the council referred to. The catapult has got, this is where I'm starting to run out of puff on this. The catapult has got four main themes. You won't be surprised to hear me say one of them is blue economy, another one is integrated transport systems, which is completely up the council's street, if you excuse my pun. We also look at sustainable environment, which is what she also talked about, and we look at exploring technology, and we are particularly interested in finding new sectors and overlaps across new sectors. So under sustainable living, what I'd be showing you here was, I really wish these slides were running, it's extremely boring. So I would go rebooting it. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for that. There's nothing more galling than talking about technology but being unable to make it work. So what you can talk about. But just to put back up here, the different catapults that I mentioned at the beginning, now 12, with government investment going in, not huge amounts of government investment, but enough to seed it. And that's why I'm offering, I think there's this opportunity to work with the centres of excellence, which this is Harwell and the catapult cluster up there, or the space cluster up there. But this is why I wanted to mention the South Coast cluster, which, as I said, had heavy maritime marine flavour to it. The Southwest cluster, and we're beginning to see signs of the two LEPs talking to each other more closely. Certainly the universities are talking to each other very closely, being very heavily involved in meetings with them. And there's, from an outside perspective, I'm the ambassador for an organisation called the Maritime Alliance in San Diego. They want a single voice. When they look at the UK, they see fragmentation. They find it very difficult to talk to people. So part of the solutions to the council's prayers might be better coordination, better cooperation. There are wonderful ranges, test ranges down in Plymouth. You've got many different SMEs up here in Portsmouth who could be and do use those ranges. How do we sell that? How do we create a catalogue that we sell internationally and influence internationally? I now got some pictures which you might have imagined from what I talked about earlier. So here we are. Here are the programs that I talked about, and they are centred around intelligent transport. There is definitely something that we can use, using Portsmouth in the nicest possible term as a sandbox, as a trials platform. There's definitely something around sustainable living. The example I'm going to give you in the moment is agri-tech, but it could just as easily be urban planning. There's lots of examples of that. Government services. We talked about government services. How do we transition government services from the public sector into the private sector and make it commercially viable? How do we build business models that will work? And then, as I said, what is the blue economy of Portsmouth, hinterland? So sustainable living resources, I think that the challenges that Donna talked about are actually a subset or a manifestation of the UN Sustainable Goals. There are some really, really big challenges out here, and this is my point. If we are able to address some of these challenges in our region, then why don't we export that? Why don't we get abroad and influence and export that and get business for UK companies who successfully cracked the problem here in the UK? And as an example, we've been using satellite applications. Satellite applications are the downstream use of data from space. It's not just about putting the toys in space, it's all about using the data that comes from them. How do you fuse data sets from space with terrestrial data sets to get a better picture of what human beings are doing? We all want a picture. It's how we take information in. You've got one of the most sophisticated agri-tech centres just along the coast here in Chichester, and the floodplain down there, right at the leading edge of agricultural technology. There is the opportunity to grow aquaculture in this country. I'll come on to aquaculture again in a moment, but I'll pop into your mind that aquaculture as a global sector is growing at 8% year on year. We are just about to pass, either we've just passed peak wild fish, or we're about to pass peak wild fish, in as much as our wild fish stocks are declining and we are now eating more farm fish than we are eating wild fish. But we're also doing a lot of damage at the same time. So what could we learn? What are our technologies in those supply chains that Donna talked about that we could create sustainable fish farming to feed a population that's going to grow by 2 billion mouths in the next 20 years? That's what's on the plot. We can do that. We've got the technology to secure this stuff in our waterways. We've got this opportunity to export it. Intelligent transport systems, there's a huge amount of work going on. It's not just about autonomous cars. Everybody talks autonomous cars. I thought the idea of a monorail, fantastic. How do you link that? How do you make certain that when you arrive with your car, go to park and ride, you can get straight onto the monorail? How do you join all that stuff together? How do you solve the parking problem? The Catapult's involved in several projects. I'm not going to go into them in any great detail, but the whole idea is to share this data. But how do we build a business model that works? Because many truck companies simply don't want to buy extra kit. They're small family businesses. They can't afford to buy extra kit. So how do you do it? Do you legislate, or do you make a business model where it becomes, you really need to use this because otherwise you're going to lose business? So what can we do from the OR community to help that? And how can we use the Centre of Excellence down here on the South Coast to help build some projects and some demonstrators? Capitals, that's an abbreviation for a project which is looking at what we're calling integrated multimodal logistics. How do you get stuff to move from ships through a port, through its hinterland and inland? Anybody here driven up and down the A34 today? It's a blooming nightmare. And it's all because there are ships coming in and out of Southampton, and quite rightly so. That's how our economy works. But can we make that work better? And it's actually not about the ships. It's about the things on the ships, and it's about where they started, where they were made by somebody in China, and when they're then monitored by somebody in Marks and Spencer's depot in Birmingham. How do we make that logistic chain work better using data? What can we bring to that story? And is it a case, I reckon, and here's a bit of operational research for you, I reckon we would see traffic pulsing in this country when a big container ship comes into Southampton or into Liverpool. I reckon you'll see traffic pulsing around Birmingham and the M5, M6 interchange about 2 or 3 days later. But how do we know that's happening? And what would we do if we had that data? Would that be valuable data? Can we do something about it? We've got a fantastic conurbation down here. If I recall correctly, Councillor, Hampshire is the most populated county in the UK after London. And I'm pretty sure Portsmouth is the most densely populated city in the country, if not one of the most densely populated cities in the country. And we've got a wonderful test bed and some serious problems to crack. If you can crack the problems at the M27 in the morning, you'll be the first to get a kiss from me. Blue economy. I'm going to major on this because I think there's a huge amount of opportunity in the blue economy. I spent 36 years in the Navy, as I said, and most of the time we've bemoaned the fact that we were out of sight, out of mind. We used to talk about sea blindness. I think, because of all the things I talked about earlier, the information that comes from space and the ability to fuse it with terrestrial data sets, I think we're on the cusp of sea vision. I think we're on the cusp of understanding our marine environment much better than we've ever understood it before, and that's where our resource lies. That's where we're going to feed people in the future. That's where we're going to get the basic mineral resources and so on that we need. They're going to come from the deep seabed. So we're going to have to manage that, and we've got to manage it in an environmentally sustainable way. First of all, we've got to know what's out there. Second, we've got to know what damage we've done to the environment. And third, we've got to do something about exploiting it in an economically viable way. So blue economies as a concept is beginning to grow. And I think, as I say, we will see most of the things we want to see about what humans do in marine seas and oceans in the near future. And indeed, there's a company in Portsmouth that's doing that at the moment. I'll mention it. So, what we talked about was my background is situational awareness, and what the Catapult wanted to do was look at how could we use space-based assets, optical imagery, synthetic aperture radar built by Airbus just down the road, and position, navigation and timing coming from GNSS systems. How could we use that to understand what goes on in the marine and maritime? One of the things we focused on was illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. It's a global environmental crime, costs the global economy something around $30 billion a year. There are about 300 major proponents, fishing vessels, that carry out this crime. And we have built a situation awareness demonstrator using a Unity game engine with a bunch of wizards who know how to type quickly and do lots of coding. We brought in an expert in investigation into illegal fishing. We put the whole lot together. What he used to do in 2 years of deep, meaningful analysis of spreadsheets and so on is now done by AI, and we're able to work out the behaviors. You can't see this very well, but this is Pitcairn Island down in the deep South Pacific Ocean, where we are tracking using AIS, which is a space-based sensor, synthetic aperture radar, and imagery. We are beginning to spot the behaviors of vessels generally, and we're specifically looking for fishing vessels. The company I mentioned that does this sort of thing is called Dryad Maritime Intelligence, just across the road from here. They are doing this for shipping companies. We are on the cusp of sea vision, and Portsmouth has got a leading SME already involved in it. That is a fundamental key set of navies, a skill set of navies. How are we going to transition that situational awareness skill set out of navies and armies and air forces and government into solving integrated transport system problems? You need a control centre for your traffic system somewhere around Portsmouth, I would argue, for example.
We have got one, believe it or not.
I'd love to go and visit you. So, the point being here, we are bringing together clever data, clever AI, space-based assets, terrestrial data sets, human experts, put them all into one pot and cracking a grand challenge. I've nearly finished. Here is my take on shipping and operations in marine and maritime. This slide here is of the North Sea. Here's the Straits of Dover going up into the North Sea. It could just as easily be going southwest, and the southwest approaches past the Isle of Wight. You can see the red tracks, those are ship tracks. Those ships don't stop in the white bits in the middle. The reason that they run out there is because we haven't got coverage of AIS over the North Sea at the moment. The black splodges are oil rigs and oil infrastructure, offshore renewable infrastructure, oil and gas infrastructure. The green splodges are the wind farms that have been parked in by cities and councils and crown estates and all the rest of it around the country, fundamentally changing the shape of that complex sea space. When I was a midshipman operating in the North Sea, there was 20% more navigable sea space out there than there is now. How do we manage that space? This is an area, a blue economy area, that we need to manage, that we can exploit, that we can benefit from. And we're beginning to see this move towards autonomous shipping. Rolls-Royce are determined, the Finn I mentioned earlier, is determined to put to sea a bespoke autonomous ship in 2018. Purpose-built autonomous ship operating between Finland and Sweden. That's because they've got the nous and the determination to get out and do that. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing that with all our skill sets? Here's a bridge of the future with head-up displays and that sort of thing. How do you monitor wind farms? How do you maintain wind farms? What's the supply chain opportunities in there for UK SMEs using UAVs or other methods of tracking? Here are 2 companies on the south coast, Dan Hook's ASV up in the north part of the harbour, doing fantastic work building unmanned surface vessels. Another one I've been very closely involved in, and so is the university here, Autonaut, conceived and built in Chichester, doing trials down in Plymouth. These are the platforms that are going to go out to sea and get that data about the marine and the maritime environment and give us the opportunity to grow our blue economy. And the companies are here in this region. What we need to do is to rally around and see how we can use them and export them and grow them and create the conditions that I hope will go to some way to address the poverty that you referred to, Donna. Another crap slide, not my afternoon. So what I wanted to show you here, please come up. This is really trying to show you the sectors in marine, the market segments in marine and maritime, which is not enjoying this, is it? So basically, if you think of the blue economy, if I say to you marine and maritime, if I went and shouted marine and maritime out in Portsmouth, or if I shouted it in London, most people immediately think shipping. Next thing is they think, we don't do much of that anymore, we don't do much shipbuilding, we don't have many shipping companies anymore. Fishing, okay, fishing. Oil and gas, you might get them around to oil and gas eventually, and they'll probably talk about a bit of tourism maybe. Actually, when you get into this and start to pick away at it, the opportunities are absolutely enormous. And the main segments that are out there waiting to happen are coastal and offshore tourism, absolutely waiting to go. Offshore renewables beginning to boom. We are ahead of the States. We could be exporting, and we should be, and we are, I think, our offshore renewable technologies to the States. They're only just kicking off. We should be looking at seabed mining. We should be looking at aquaculture. Aquaculture is huge. And we're not just talking here fish, we're talking mussels and crustaceans and that sort of thing, but we're also talking seaweed. There's a huge market for seaweed. And we're talking marine biopharmaceuticals and all those sorts of things. And we have the ability to do that. Marine Southeast, small company up in Southampton, I mentioned them earlier on, they have come up with a way of taking terrestrial technologies for securing infrastructure ashore. They've marinized it, they've taken it out to sea, they drill big screws into the seabed, and you don't have to have a 90-ton concrete block which will move in a gale force 12. You've got a nice big screw securing. That is an example of innovative technology. What we need out at sea is great big massive golf ball style fish farms that move around in the open ocean and move around to keep the fish clean, to keep the hygiene levels up and all that sort of stuff. We've got the ability to create that technology. So I don't think that whilst these are grand challenges, I think they are grand opportunities, and I suggest that we have many opportunities. I love the idea of pro bono OR. I spend a lot of my time, I can get more pro bono work than you shake a hairy stick at. So pro bono is good. I think we've got some wonderful SMEs that we could work with in this region. We've got this Catapult Centre of Excellence, we've got a proactive university, we've got a proactive political system in the city. Let's go out there and find something to do. And I'm sorry about my rather fragmented presentation. I'd like to thank you all.